Hi everyone, we're going to move on now to the very first lesson of Math 10-3, Unit 3, which is Measurement Part 1. We're going to start off today by looking at the metric system, and this is the system of measurement that you have likely used throughout your school career if you've grown up in Canada. The other system that we will soon learn about is the imperial system, and let's just be honest, both of these systems will pop up in your daily life, and I think it's important to understand and recognize both systems and how to do some measurements and some calculations with them. I mean, the notes here are pretty standard. They introduce what the metric system is and it's a little bit of its history. What I want to say to you is the one nice thing about the metric system is that everything is based on multiples of 10. And so what does this mean? Like, why do we even care about this? By knowing this fact, it allows us to easily convert between different measurements. So what I mean by that is if someone had a measurement in kilometers and they want me to change that into meters, I can do so very easily. Another way of doing this would be is if you had something in centimeters and you want that changed into kilometers, well, we could do that calculation very easily as well. So this is your standard metric table. I don't want you to memorize it. I don't need you to memorize it. But I can tell you this. I can go between all of those different values by either multiplying by 10 a certain number of times or dividing by 10 a certain number of times. Now, I'm going to show you a couple different ways of going about this. So please have your data page, your formula sheet in front of you as we move throughout this unit. I'm going to go to the next page here. And on the next page, I found an error. I'd like you to go, before we learn anything, could you please go to this paragraph and change the word multiply into divide? And can you please change the word divide in this paragraph to multiply? Okay. Now, why the heck do we want to do that? Now, I just want to bring your example to this staircase, or bring your attention to this staircase over here. What I want you to know is, if we read this paragraph, if you are going up the stairs, you will divide by 10 for each step. So if I go from mm is millimeters to centimeters, decimeters, meters, each of those steps, if I wanted to go from one to another, I would divide by 10 for each step, so on and so forth. So let's just imagine that I had, let's say I had 5,000 millimeters, and I want to go into centimeters. One strategy you can use is divide by 10. Well, how many stairs is that? So let's see. If I divide by 10 once, I'm here. Divide by 10 again, I'm here. So that's once, that's twice, that's 3 times in total. Sorry, I'm going to put this to meters. I apologize. So I want to take 5,000 millimeters into meters. So how many steps do we take? We take 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. So that means that you must take 5,000 and divide it by 10 3 times. So basically what you would do is you would get your calculator out, and don't get me wrong, there are different ways of doing this. You can go 5,000 divided by 10, divided by 10, and divided by 10, and that would give you 5 meters. You have switched that over properly. Because as we go up the staircase, or if I go back for 1 second, remember, if we start on, another way of looking at it is, if you start on this side of the table and you convert up, you divide by 10 for each step. So divide by 10, divide by 10, divide by 10. Vice versa, as we'll soon learn, if you're starting with a bigger unit and coming down, you will times by 10 for each step. So I'll just do one more for you here. Let me just erase that. Let's pretend we started with, we'll go 300 decimeters, and we want hectometers. Okay, so you can refer to this. So let's see, we were going up. So we're going from, let's see, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. So each of those steps you have to divide by 10 as you move up the table. So you would take 300 and you would divide it by 10. 1, 2, 3 times. So 300 divided by 10, divided by 10, divided by 10 gives you 0.3 hectometers. Okay? And you can go on and on with this over and over and over. Now, I guess the opposite then must be true if you are going down the staircase. So if you are going down the staircase, you are going to multiply by 10 each time. And I did mention that, as you see back here. So if we look back at our standard table, oh, I'm sorry, I'll just hit that. There we go. Come on. Okay, whoops, sorry. What I said here is if you start with, let's say, a bigger unit and you want to convert down to a smaller one, you will times by 10 in each step. So if you look here, let's say I want to go from kilometers to, meters. Okay, so let's say I had, 13 kilometers, and I want to know how many meters that is. Well, each of these steps down, I have to multiply by 10. So times by 10, so on. So let's see, that's once, that's twice, and that's 3 times. So it'd be like times 10, times 10, times 10, which is equal to 1,000. So that's going to give you 13,000 meters. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've been taught throughout your life how to convert between meters, kilometers, centimeters, and all of those rules still apply. But I'm just trying to show you another method right now as to how to go between, how to use the staircase method, okay? So if you are going from, I'll just summarize this one last time. I'll just erase this here. These would be your small units. These would be your large units. And we know that because, heck, a kilometer is a heck of a lot bigger than a millimeter. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. If you are going from a small unit of measurement and you're trying to go up to a large, you must divide by 10 for each step that you take up. If you are going the other way around, if you have a large unit and you're trying to go down to a smaller unit, you must multiply by 10 for each step that you take down. That will actually serve you very, very well as you try to go through this unit and allow you to convert between metric measurements, okay? This is another way of looking at it right here in more of a written out version. It just shows you how to go in between each of these units. And it stands to reason everything here stays the same. And if you look, if you want to do anything for yourself, you could put large here. And you could put small here. And just follow the direction. So in this question, in this example, number 1 here, they are going in this direction. They're going from large and they're going smaller in each case. And as we learned above, that must mean you multiply by 10 for each step. In the second row, they are starting with small and going the opposite direction. And as we learned, if you wanted to go in each, keep jumping and keep jumping and keep jumping, you would divide by 10 each step along the way. Okay? Let's see here. The next thing that you should know about are called reference. Now, this might come up here or there. Reference are objects that represent approximately 1 unit of measurement. For these units, the thickness of a paperclip for millimeters, the width of an adult baby finger for a centimeter, the length of a pace, 2 steps for a meter. So you see, it's kind of like we're not always going to have a ruler or a measuring tape around us. A referent is an everyday object we could use to somewhat estimate a measurement. So for example, if I look at this one, it says the length of a pace, 2 steps for a meter. So you could, let's say you're walking along and you want to know, let's say, how long a section of grass is. Well, every 2 steps you take, you could say, okay, that's a meter. So you could just say, well, it took, let's say, 20 steps in total. Well, I must have 10 meters, okay? Reference are, again, everyday objects that we can use to measure. And like another one is the baby finger for a centimeter. Some people take the width of a finger and they will put that along an object and they count how many finger widths they have, and that counts for centimeters. That's not a big issue. You'll come across that in a bit. So, what I want you to focus on now is your ability to go between different metric measurements, okay? There are a few different ways of doing this. There is a cross multiply and divide method that you can use, or you simply can use this times 10 and divide by 10. I'm going to let you practice a little bit right now, and we're going to move on from there. If you'd like me to show you an example of how to progress with the cross multiply and divide method, you can keep watching. If you're happy with what you have right now, you can kind of stop watching and move on. But if you want me to teach you another way of doing this, I'm just going to push this over to, let's go here. I want to show you part B, which says convert the following measurements as indicated. One thing you always can use is cross multiplying and dividing. And this comes up, it can be a very useful skill. Now, I don't mean to confuse anyone, but if you have your data page in front of you or your formula sheet, if you look in the top right-hand corner, it shows you on the very first page that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. So, what I try to teach people is this method. What I do is I put an equal sign and two fractions, and I call this side what I know, and I call this side what I want. Now, if you look at question number 1, we are dealing with kilometers and meters. Okay? Now, here's what we know. We are looking for kilometers and meters. If you look on your data page, it says 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. We know that. It has both of the measurements we're concerned with, kilometers and meters, and it's given to us on our data page. So what you can do is you can go 1 kilometer is over 1,000 meters. That's what we know. Now, if you go back to the question, what we want our meters. They've given us 38 kilometers. What you have to do is match. So would the 38 kilometers go on the top or the bottom on the right-hand side? Well, it would go on the top because kilometers were on top on the left. So we'll put 38 kilometers there. This would be your X. Now, we have covered cross multiply and divide very, very much in the first unit. But, it's a skill that I don't really want to go over it again. And if you have trouble with this, please speak with your teacher. But basically what you're going to get is you're going to get an answer of 38,000. X equals 38,000. So that would be your value that goes right here. It will be 38,000. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because some people prefer using cross multiply and divide. And it also allows you to use information that is given to you on your formula sheet. So, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's always going to work. You certainly can keep using this multiplying and dividing by 10 approach, but in some cases, the cross multiply and divide method will benefit you. Now you see, if you wanted to try this for number 2, you run into a little bit of a problem if you're using the same data sheet that I have. Because look at number 2. If I try to set this up, I'm looking at kilometers and centimeters. Now, if you look at the top right-hand side of your data sheet, we do not have a conversion between kilometers and centimeters. So if you would like, I have no problem if you neatly write and add this conversion onto your formula sheet. So, because then you can use the cross multiply and divide method. So again, I'm not trying to confuse anyone. I just hope that this really helps it to make sense. So here's what I want you to write into that location. So on your data sheet, what I'd like you to write, I'll just kind of go here. I'd like you to write 1 kilometer equals, now we'll get this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. Okay, so 1 centimeter is 100,000, or sorry, 1 kilometer is 100,000 centimeters. Okay, that's your conversion factor that you can write on your data page in the top right-hand corner. Now, why do we care about this? Well, if you like using cross, multiply, and divide, you are going to need to know this conversion. So remember, this is my know side, where I know everything, and this is my want side. Whoops. So, oh, I'm sorry, I'm writing on the side here. So, let's move on. If you look at number 2, the 2 units we are concerned about are kilometers and centimeters. You now have this written on your formula sheet. We know that 1 kilometer is equal to 100,000 centimeters. If you look at number 2, what we are looking for is centimeters, and what we have is 0.4 kilometers. So on the right-hand side, where would that 0.4 go? That 0.4 would have to go on the top because kilometers was on top on the left. And this would be your x. Again, you're using cross, multiply, and divide, but hopefully this is a skill that you still have. And if it is kind of left you, please speak with your teacher for a little bit of a review on that. And you get 40,000. So, again, we know that 1 kilometer is 100,000 centimeters. We use this on the left-hand side, and then we use on the right-hand side 0.4 kilometers over x, and that gives us 40,000 centimeters. So in summary, number 1, you are more than welcome to, remember, if you're going up the staircase, you can divide by 10 as many times as you need to. Remember, if you're going down the staircase, you can times by 10 as many times as you need to. You'll get the exact right answer each and every time. I simply wanted to show you that cross multiplying and dividing is a skill that can be utilized in this unit, and this information can be found on your data page. Please feel free to add more conversion values to the top right-hand side of your data page as needed. And finally, where do you find that information? You can find it by simply Googling it. So what I did, because for number 2, I wanted to know kilometers to centimeters. I simply Googled 1 kilometer is equal to how many centimeters? And it told me 1 kilometer is equal to 100,000 centimeters. You can use whichever one you want to use, and I will refer to both of these as we move along. Okay, let's try some practice.